Hello and good evening, everybody who's ever listening to us, who are with us, and who've been chilling out this whole week. Welcome to Creating the Conversation podcast with Imran and Ivan. We are live today on Friday of 9th of October 2020. Guys, hopefully that you've had a brilliant week, you've had a good week under the limitations and the restrictions of COVID-19. The second lockdown is in progress at this moment in time, which I know has been very difficult for different communities, people from different backgrounds. Of course, from the elderly community or the elders within our community, they had just about started to come out into the community, started to engage, started to get some sort of normality. And once again, we've been told that we have to go back into behind our doors to keep ourselves safe and everybody else. So, big man Ivan, how are you, mate? How are things at your end? What's been happening? How's your world?
Yeah, my world's good. It's been all right down here. We haven't got lockdown conditions you have, so I guess our life's a bit easier than you. But yeah, life's been good. Good week. Another week, it just flies past now, don't it? Do you know what I mean? It
does.
I guess as you get older, the time just seems like yesterday we're doing last week's podcast.
It just flies.
I think it's just sitting at home, sitting around, making it go quicker.
Obviously, but the thing is that under the circumstances, it does make it a bit more difficult because the world we live in at this moment is being stuck at home or in front of a screen or in front of our laptops or whatever it is, and it seems like in a way our world has become very small. You understand? Very limited, and it's a bit of a weird type of experience, I think.
It's not with that; it's become boring as well. Because you're not allowed to do nothing, are you? Do you know what I mean? So I suppose soon boredom becomes frustration. And that's probably another conversation I have later on, that is. I mean,
yeah, definitely. And I think that's the most deadly state.
There is that boredom factor is what leads people online, because there's more online, but then there's also lots of rabbit holes online as well.
It is. Ivan, today we want to talk about something very, very important. This month, of course, is a very significant month. October tends to be synonymous with Black Lives Matters. We talk about Black History Month, right? But coincidentally, it also has a week which is known as Hate Crime Awareness Week. And we have an amazing program next week as well. But I think our intention, myself and Ivan's intention, this week was to give you an introduction to some aspects of why the reality of it. Why is it that hate crime exists? What's the reason behind that? Why does hate exist? Do you understand? As human beings, as individuals, we are psychologically or biologically, we are social animals. We're about association. We're about engagement. We're about being with other human beings, right? That's what we are about. And we don't exist without other human beings and other individuals. But sadly, we've at the same time, even though if a person looks slightly different or might be from a slightly different background or different culture or different religion or gender or sexuality or whatever it is, do you understand? We tend to hold certain type of prejudices. We tend to hold certain type of views. And of course, that evolves to become discrimination, which of course, in the legal sense, becomes hate crime. Now, that's why this week, our intention, once again, because we are creating the conversation, and ultimately the conversation is not between myself and Ivan. The purpose of all of these discussions on the podcast is that maybe those who are listening, those people who might find, we get what they're saying. Let's do some research. Let's look into this. Let's start sharing and talking and discussing about some of the topics that they're touching on. Because the thing is, in the world that we live in today, guys, right, we need to have conversation. We need to have dialogue. We need to have this discussion. Everybody feels, right, muted. Everybody starts feeling, oh, I can't say what I have the right to say whatever I want. Do you know what I'm saying? How dare you muffle me? How dare you shut me up? And guess what happens? Sadly, that creates a particular type of environment of hate, of prejudice, of discrimination, and of course that evolves into something even more horrific. So there are sometimes in the societies and the communities that we live in, there has to be a sense of openness. And I think, I don't know, Ivan, I know what your views are going to be on this, but I think we have become individuals who have very, very thin skin. You know, we can't really take certain views and ideas and philosophies and people's thoughts and reflections. We react, all right? May that be with a statement, or may that be with a physical, reaction of abuse towards someone. And then we start reflecting, oh my God, I should have not done that. I don't know what your views on that, mate. Tell me, hate crime, why does it exist, bro?
I think it touched on the big part of it is the conversation. Do you know what I mean? It's just like you said about people, not so much thin skinned, but I'd say more blinkered in their own personal views of things. Do you know what I mean? And it's like I've said before, and over many years, that I come out of my blinkered view and spoke to somebody different. It opened me up to something else, that common ground, which become friendship. So I'm not just saying to do that, but to understand. You can't tackle something if you don't understand where it comes from.
Exactly.
And to understand where it comes from, you have to have the conversations that will go against your moral compass. Like some conversations we have, we don't agree on it, but we have to remain neutral, not having any kind of real view on it, because that person in front of you believes it. And who are we to say you're wrong because he believes it? So to remain neutral and have that conversation. And to be fair, the conversations are quite easy. I think it's the listening. The listening's the hard part, because you are going to hear things that go against every part of your moral compass, but you still can't judge that person. You can only listen to understand, and then you can continue the conversation with a bit more balance and allow that person to critically think for themselves by giving them the extra jigsaw piece they haven't got.
I agree, and I think and this is something that needs to be done on every level, I think, and it's essential. I know there's something I really want to bring to the conversation today. Is, Ivan, why were you a hater? Right. So I'm going to bring that to the conversation. Right. And weirdly, the people that you hated, in fact, are your mates now. How the hell did that happen? Right. So I'm going to talk about that as well. But before we do that today, I want to put on this particular short video, short clip, and I would like our listeners to watch this, and maybe it may turn some cogs in their hearts and their minds about maybe we need to be a bit more aware of things that happen around us, and we'll have a chat in a few moments.
Oh, another one. Get that stupid thing off your head!
Look at the wheels! My wheels! You need to get off the bus. You're useless.
It's right there. Check them out. Yeah.
You guys a pair of lesbians, are you? You're disgusting. You should leave, or I'm going to sort you out.
If you target anyone with verbal, online, or physical abuse because of their religion, race, sexual orientation, disability, or transgender identity, you may be committing a hate crime. It's not just offensive, it's an offense.
I think that's a very good campaign video, right? Which has been created and made to make people aware of the realities of hate crime, realities of hate and discrimination against different people with disability, because of their sexuality, because of their religion. In other words, what I see in all of this, Ivan, is that the other, right? That's what I'm seeing with this.
Yeah.
When people see someone who's different, right? May that be physically different, may that be religiously different, ideologically different, may that be because they are wearing clothes that are different, we tend to react sadly in a negative way towards them. I think that's something that needs to be talked and discussed about. And of course, this is the basis of the act itself, which governs this. You know, the Equalities Act of 2010. So this, what you are seeing in front of you, is the summary of that. When someone is hostile to another person because of their disability, nationality, their race, religion, sexual orientation, or transgender identity, and they show their hostility by intimidation, harassment, damaging property, and violence, it is called what? Hate crime. That's what hate crime is. Understand? So in fact, there are 9 protective factors, all right, within which has been recognized within the Equalities Act 2010, which has evolved over the years, over the last number of decades, all right, and it's become law at this moment in time. And I think I can understand why this exists. I can understand why this was an essential and important part of legislation that needed to be passed. But from another position, I think it's really sad, isn't it? That we had to ingrain this into our law for people not to treat other individuals, other human beings differently. Do you know what I mean? I think this is something which needs to be reflected over, right? I get it. Hate crimes exists, and exists because you have some concerns or issues with the other. Maybe there's a fear. Maybe there's this idea of, you know, and even in the psychologists looked into this. They go, sadly, in the world that we live in today, sadly that the world that we live in, even though there are so many things which are common between us, right? But there's a sense of, I want to be number one. I want to succeed, right? So this idea that survival of the fittest. So I have to aspire. I have to become something even greater than I am. So what do? We push others down. And we use different ways of doing that. Sometimes we do it physically, sometimes we do it economically, sometimes we do it ideologically. Right? I am better than you because I have a certain religion, I come from a certain part of the world, I have a certain skin color, I have a certain, you know, I am a heterosexual and you are homosexual, and because of that, I am better than you, blah, 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 blah. Just to show that I'm better and I want to succeed and move forward. So what are your views on watching that video just now, Ivan? What are your reflections on that?
I liked it. I thought it was quite powerful. And I liked the way they used the like the police photo face type thing. The photo fit, I thought that was quite good, because that kind of gave me the impression that that person might have got in trouble for what they said. Because it sort of gives that reality of that, I don't know, the end goal, you could have a mugshot. Do you know what I mean? So, and I thought that video was good because it didn't just cover one form of hate crime, it covered the selection, which I think is important about balance, because when you talk about one thing more than the other, that becomes the main focus. But hate crime has got many strands and it should be talked about with balance.
And it needs to be, and it needs to, all aspects and all elements needs to be discussed. So when you say that it needs to be spoken about in balance, what do you mean by that?
Mention all forms of hate crime. Like, for example, in our world, the counter-extremism world, we only talk about two forms of extremism, the far right or the Islamist. You know, and I know there's other forms that aren't spoken about enough, so probably people don't think they're real or they exist. But
No,
once you talk about everything in a balanced thing, it's just like you have to give people the full picture and not just part of the picture, because if not, they'll make up their own ending. So if you present everything,
yeah. No, I agree with you. We just had a comment from John Palmer, and thank you very much, guys. John, Luke, all right, and everyone that's on here today, you know, joined us today. God bless you for that. Thank you very much. Now, John's making a very good point, and he's saying that there is, for example, there's I've seen a tweet today from Antifa member in the north of England tweeting and boasting about throwing a brick through the window of what they call a fascist. You understand? Now, this is the other side. This is the other side. Now, we talk about hate from Islamism, on the Islamists. We talk about hate from the perspective of the far right. But of course, there is also hate on the part of the far left. Okay, and this is something that, like, I understand what you're saying. There has to be equal play field. Everyone needs to be spoken about and discussed. Okay, 1 minute, guys. Just because you're on one wing or the other, that doesn't give you the right to express hate towards the other in that particular manner, right?
Because, like, even going back to my past, part of my journey was the left fearing me. They were calling me Nazi and fascist and everything. I was none of them. I was still on demos with people, and we were called Nazi for 6 hours in our face. So after a little while, people will get a bit annoyed. Right, calling me a Nazi, I'll throw a salute just to wind them up. Then the newspaper headline would be Nazis at a demo. It wasn't always like that. Do you know what I mean? When you call somebody a label that they're not, they don't accept, they will start acting to that label after so long.
See, that's the problem I have. Do you understand? What you've just touched on at the moment is that if you keep on calling someone a certain name by a certain slogan, right, or an abusive statement, sadly, to react, that person may commit a particular crime or react in a particular way, which they probably initially don't want to. Right? I know this. Look, this is a controversial area of discussion for people. All right, they see when they look at, especially when they used to look at EDL, for example, they used to say, "Oh, EDL, far right extremist," whereas we know that's not true, right? They had a certain hate. They hate, sadly, are Muslims, right? So everything do, and it came out of because the way certain Islamists and etc. were acting and behaving. So there was a street movement that was created. We know this is the evolutionary process of the EDL, right? That came to existence. But the thing was, because on TV, on screen, right? Rectify me. This is me. This is my research on this. Yeah, you the one who was in there, mate. You know what I mean? This is me standing outside and saying this. Yeah. Now look at this. So this particular organization reacts towards some of the actions and behaviors of certain very extreme Islamist characters, right? Especially the way certain people that were, internally, nationally created or made, right, or that originated from England, and they were talking and discussing about hate of the other, hate of the army, hate of British people, British life, British whatever it was, and there was a reaction. So reaction, you got someone like some organization like EDL comes into existence, they react towards that. Sadly, because they were on TV, because the media had given them this light and whatever it was, they became the focus of so-called far-right hate. And I know of this, that there were certain demos that took place, far-right extremists trying to come in with their swastikas, all right, and with this, this far-right extremist symbolism. And there were EDL members that said, "Hey, leg it. Who do you think you are?" Which is really weird, because on one side, they're the one that's seen as pretty extreme. And the other side, people realize, 1 minute, these guys are not Nazis. Do you know what I mean? They have a particular hate. And they're very open about it. Go for it.
That was the thing back then, right? I've told you many times that I was radicalized by a Muslim guy, Ajam Chowdhury. Do you know what I mean? It was, I live in a white town as well, so not many Muslims at all. Plus, our media made Ajam Chowdhury the go-to Muslim on the TV, the newspaper, the documentary. He was everywhere. And where I live, we didn't see anybody challenging him. And if the media went to him, he's the main voice of the Muslim community in the UK to me back then. Do you know what I mean? So you quickly research him and you find out lots of stuff that you don't agree with. Even you, if you obviously didn't agree with him back then, but we didn't have none of Muslims like you back then, man. So we made up the rest ourselves, I guess, in a way. But Ajam Chowdhury was the main link, not only for Muslims, but for white guys like me. And it was just sad that a lot of our demos as well, we were reacting at newspaper headlines or stories. But when we voiced it, we were called racists and bigots. But it was printed in the newspaper. Do you know what I mean? So
let me ask you this then.
So if they called us anti-Muslim, we'd have wore that with pride because that's what we were. in a way.
And that was
We
your
went
hate.
far
That
away.
was the
Yeah,
cohort
yeah.
of your hate. But let me ask you this, mate. You know, let me ask you this very clearly. Yeah. You know, there's this misunderstanding, right, among a lot of people that there are certain people, they wake up one day and they become hate mongers. Do you understand? See, I have a problem with that.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
So tell me what happens. Tell me the process of hate. Because come on, you didn't wake up and Muslim hated, did you? You didn't wake up thinking,
not
oh,
at all.
Muslims are like this. You went for the last, you know, you're a young man, I think. You know what I mean? You might have a different opinion about yourself, mate. But what I'm saying is, I'm not joking. I'm being serious. Yeah. Hey, come on. But what I'm saying is that all of these years, right, even before the EDL life that you had, yeah, would you say you hated Islam, Muslims? Did you always hold this
I
hatred?
didn't really know about it.
Right.
No, not at all. I didn't really know about. Like I said, I live in a white town, so I never had that experience of mixing with anybody else like that. But I become aware of Islam, I suppose, around 2001, of course, September 11th. That's when it kind of entered my head a bit. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't even act on that. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't until I had a personal connection that it triggered me. So, like Ajahn Chowdhury, when he attacked our troops in Luton, that triggered me. That's when I started thinking, who are you to say that to our troops? Because, like I said, I worked for a charity and I knew some of the soldiers on that parade that day. So that personal connection for me was a bit stronger for some people. And that's where it started, do you know what I mean, with that. Because I then started researching him and looking into him. I watched lots of his videos, lots of his writings, and I become knowledgeable in a few months, I reckon, on Islam. Well, what I thought was Islam. I was really knowledgeable there. I kind of knew everything, I thought, because it was his interpretation of Islam.
All of the information you got, all the information you were getting was from where?
Online, YouTube.
Right. Oh, deadly.
And
do you know what I mean?
Chamber. Yeah.
God almighty.
Honestly, back in 2009, YouTube was. Do you know what I mean? That had so many extremist Muslims on there with a voice back then. A lot of them nowadays are dead and died in Syria. Do you know what I mean? But back then, I think the difference between then and now was we knew who our enemy was. We could see him. We knew it was Ajahn Chowdhury. We knew it was Al Qaeda and the people around Chowdhury. But nowadays with ISIS, that sort of threat changed because you haven't got nobody on the TV. You haven't got nobody on YouTube. Do you see what I mean? So this is probably why that anti-Muslim hatred has increased over the years, because where before you could see the enemy, now you can't. So it's easier to stereotype.
So do you think that the foundations of hate are not entirely based upon solid, clear facts?
No, not in my experience. It hasn't been. But it depends on,
if it hasn't, let me hold you. Let me hold you. One minute. Let me hold you down for a second. Think about this for a second, yeah. Right? If you had the original facts, you would still have problems with Muslims. Yeah. Something happened, something changed with the facts that you had, or you assumed they were factual.
I assumed they were factual at first until I met my perceived enemy, a Muslim guy.
Oh. So, okay, tell me. Go for it.
So I was in the EDL 5 years, but a couple of years in, I had a chance meeting with a white Muslim convert. He was busy the day I met him, so we arranged to meet the next day. I met him for 6 months, and we got on all right. He was able to challenge me on a lot of things. But when I challenged him on my interpretation of Islam, he didn't have a clue. So after 6 months, I'm still friends with him today. I didn't think I was getting anything anymore. So we sort of parted ways a little bit because, if I'm honest, this probably a bit disrespectful now, but I've told him this. But back then, I thought I was more knowledgeable on Islam than he was, even though, here's the funny bit, he was a practicing Muslim for 15 years. I thought in my short time, I knew more than him. So, but then, like I said, I then met my perceived enemy. I guess what everyone wants to say is the brown skinned, the big bearded Muslim. My mate Manwar, and he was from a certain He was from a certain background as well. So he was a former Islamist in the past.
There you are.
Yeah, me and Manwar. So, because of his past, he could see something in me, I think. So we engaged in conversation, and over a period, it wasn't like people think that I spoke to him and I was cured. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like that. I met with Kinil for 6 months, conversations weekly, and then with Manwar, it was conversations for over a period of 2 years. So it was a quick process to get involved in, but the process out is a lot longer, because along the way, there's things to test me, like Lee Rigby's murder, for example.
Yeah.
That tested our friendship to the ultimate, because I was really angry at that. But again, both the Muslim guys, Manwar and Kinil, rang me up the next day to apologise and explain to me the reality kind of thing, that what they were seeing, and it didn't represent their Islam, it was the political ideology in that. And then
hold on one second. By them contacting you, right, and saying that they was, in fact, in reality, they're not the ones who committed the crime.
No.
And in fact, they had nothing to do with the ideology of the individual that had committed that crime.
No.
So why were they apologizing?
I don't know, if I'm honest. I never asked that question. I just thought it because back then they were maybe worried about retaliation, maybe, or we'd become friends. It might have damaged our friendship or something. I don't know. But when they did that, in my head, that meant I could trust them. I trusted them totally then.
Right.
If you know what I mean. Because
so when people say,
have to do that.
So let me share this with you then. So let me ask you this question then. When people say that atrocity happened, right? Where are the Muslims? Why are they not coming out? Right?
Yeah.
Why are they not condemning this? Whereas Ivan, you and I, we know, working with me in your education and doing the work that we do, that we scream and shout to condemn the actions of these individuals. All right, what tends to happen, the horrific acts. But for some odd stupid reason, we're not heard. Or maybe we're going about it wrong way, I don't know. Because I think if them words of apology helped you, Ivan, to at least reflect, to think, okay, 1 minute, it's not all, it's just some, and the minority amongst them, and there's some of them were crazies. If this was projected at a national or international level, it could help to reduce that, couldn't it?
No, I don't think it could.
Right. See, that's me that idealistically thinking that this is the solution.
No, that's the easiest. That it wouldn't work, because the process of hate needs an individual touch. Everybody is different. There's no one size fit all message. It's the same as the work we do at counter extremism. There's no one size fit all radicalization process.
True.
It has to be not tailor made, but it has to be with that person, because everybody's issue has got a different perspective on it. So you can't tackle them all at once with some big video message saying, "Hey, you're cured from hate." It doesn't work. It has to be on a personal level, one-to-one. Not one-to-one. You could probably do it in group work, but then it also, the important thing there is the other people, whoever you're speaking to, need to come there with an open mind and prepared to step out the comfort zone to hear things that they're probably not prepared to hear.
Yeah.
But it's the only way to make people critically think for themselves.
So this world of, the world that we live in today is PC, isn't it? political correctness, right?
Yeah.
So so what I'm trying to get to is, do you feel one way to counter hate is to reduce being PC?
See, it's a thin line here, isn't there? Do you know what I mean?
Ah, look at you! Look at you! All right.
I know I have to think about my answers now. No, but I think there is that fine line with political correctness. That, like, for an example, back in the EDL days, I remember us doing a demonstration in Western Supermare, I think, because of somebody being told to take down their Union Jack. I think it was that. Do you know what I mean? But we heard it was a Muslim complaint, so we done a demonstration down there. But a couple of weeks later on, we found out that it was a white person who did that complaint, not a Muslim. Things like that, when people think for other people, that's where you have problems. If you see what I mean, it's a bit like our government speaking for us, but not really talking to us. If you know what I mean, it's a bit like that where you're offended for somebody else when that the other person you're offended for probably isn't. Then it becomes a bit messy. Then, do you know what I mean? That's kind of the politeness, less controversial way I could say it. But yeah, it's thin ice. Do you know what I mean? Because it's that thin line, and it can go either way still. But I do think when people think for other people and speak for other people, it causes problems, definitely.
No, and at the same time, I'm being in England, being in Britain, and I think it's not only a Western tradition, but it is a universal tradition, where if there are spaces where people are not being real, not saying exactly what the problem is, or talking and discussing in safe spaces, right? Yeah. Sadly, that builds more hate, more prejudice, more slowly that evolves into discrimination, and that ultimately can become the foundation of expression of abuse. Do you know what I mean? Toward others. So for me, there have to be spaces. And this is why, in a way, like we're having a conversation, right? We're having a discussion about certain things. There are certain things we're going to talk and discuss about are not that straightforward for people to understand or maybe engage with sometimes. They feel, oh, no, that's too much for me. That's too much hate there. I can't discuss that. But I think there has to be some thick-skinned people that have to get to the bottom of a problem by going through all the palaver. Because if you don't do that, you can't really remove hate from people. Look, if I want someone to reduce their views and ideas about Jewish people, right, the Jewish nation, yeah? Now, I know that person is an outright anti-Semite. Okay, may that be because of the views that they have about Israel, may that be because they feel how all Jews are like this, or they have a certain ideology about these individuals. Over time, that person has built a certain cohort of knowledge, which is probably not fully true, right? It's been heard from here and there based upon stereotypes, which are not always true, right? On the back of that, his hate has gone from one level to the next level. Right now, for that person to work with that particular type of person and dealing with, for example, anti-Semitism, which is one type of hate, which is hate, and it's hate towards those people who are Semitic or from the Jewish tradition. Right now, if I want to tackle that, I have to have an open conversation. In other words, I have to listen to the guy. How is it you got there, bro? What the hell happened to you? Do you know what I'm saying? I'm going to get to that first. I have to listen to the hard stuff, the difficult bits, get to the soft part and say, yeah, 1 minute. This is where you went wrong. But our problem is we close down the conversation even before we get to the core.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help. That builds more hate, doesn't it?
It's like I said in my story. It was the lack of meaningful engagement with me that drove me further involved in the echo chambers, because that's where I was getting my answers from. That's where I was having my conversations. Nobody outside my bubble wanted to have that conversation with me, because it become, even nobody wanted to speak to us. Do you know what I mean? We were just labelled, and that's how, and that labelling back then has been seen on a mass scale since Brexit. Look, when Brexit happened, this is when we started to see a bigger divide in our country, because the minute people voted leave, 17.4 million, I think, were labelled far right and fascists, and that's
See, that's
carried
wrong.
on. Do you know what I mean? It's just because the PC thing about today is you can't seem to have a difference of opinion to anybody unless it's like you've got to pick a side with every argument now. Do you know what I mean? Everything's becoming a divisional us and them narrative now. Like I said last week, I think it was, even face masks are becoming a bit of an issue with people.
Yeah,
They're becoming seen us and them, us the wearers, them the non-wearers. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy. And you look at, like we're talking about hate crime. I used to be involved in hate crime a while ago, so it was the same back then. We pour lots of money into short projects that only have a short-term effect. We need funding to go into long-term projects that have a lasting effect.
So I have
like
a photo
the same as
here.
our world.
It does. I have a photo here. I know you're talking about this. Yeah, this is one of those type of places that you've gone to. This is Suffolk hate crime services.
That was a hate crime movement.
A participant and an event that took place around this. I know up and down the country, and especially they've got Hate Crime Awareness Week coming up between the 10th and the 17th of October. And guys, that's one of the reasons why we have chosen to discuss and converse and share our thoughts and reflections about from our personal backgrounds and expertise, and engaging with people who partake in certain type of criminal activity, abusive activity, because of a starting point sometime, which is based upon ignorant hate. It may be because of their personal experience. It may be because of the type of interaction that they've had with a group of people, right? May that be they've just suddenly not, because that doesn't happen suddenly. It takes time. Of course, there's a process why people start hating other individuals, expressing this sense of dislike of another human being. May that be of their gender, may that be of their religion, may that be of their skin color, may that, whatever it is, whatever the reasons are, all right, why a person expresses hate towards another human being, another person, right? There's different reasons. But I think by having the likes of these awareness weeks, opportunity for people to reflect, all right, I get it 100%. People hate, they have their views. There's not, we live in sometimes we live in a world which is PC, that's shutting down conversations. It puts a lot of pressure on people. All right, they want to say they want to say, what's in their mind and their heart. And guess what? They don't get the opportunity to do that. That harbors, and when that harbors, that develops and creates into something which is known as discrimination, which all ultimately becomes hate. And then a person might engage in an activity where they may go over to a religious place, or they may go to a club or whatever. There are people of a different gender and abuse them, and that becomes hate crime. That's the process. But at the same time, Ivan, the world I live in is also important for me to understand why people do that.
That's the thing. That's the thing. When I got asked to help with Suffolk hate crime back in 2014, 15, I think it was. That's one thing I noticed. I've been to a couple of events to watch, and I was listening to people speaking. And the people that were speaking were victims, which was good to hear, do you know what I mean? But then I heard other people speaking just about hate, but nobody was speaking about why people hated, which is what I said to Debbie at the time. I said, right, I want to do something where I tell people why I hated, because that was a gap back then. And it's still a gap nowadays, because when there's violence or there's trouble anywhere, that's all we talk about. Nobody wants to know why, where, how. Do you know what I mean? And until we understand that, you can't tackle the issue. You can't tackle it properly because you're one-sided view. You have to understand where people are coming from. That's why I got into the world of hate crime back then, because I wanted people to understand why I hated. But not just that, because I did a string of events I've done the last 3 years. I've done at the National Holocaust Centre. Yes. I do their sort of hate crime week with them. and it's been good to be there to explain why people hate. It's been an experience for me and other people, because my story is one of being a perpetrator, but also a victim of hate crime as well, because when I left, obviously, all the support I had turned to hate. So I was getting a lot of threats when I left. So
You became the hater becomes the hated.
yes, so it was a bit like karma, if you believe in karma. I hated for 5 years. Now it's my turn to get back. But I didn't think it would last 6 years, if you know what I mean. I don't get it as bad as I did, but every now and then I get something that's really out of this world. Do you know what I mean? But luckily for me, I can see it as karma, and I don't really take too much offense to it. But even that has become normalized, which is even worse. So, but yeah, that was the first ever talk I did at, I think it's based at Edmund's Cathedral. That's going back some years. Yeah, it's
That's
about
a
5
big
years ago.
year,
I think.
right?
Yeah, about
But
5
then
years ago.
again,
That is.
being proactive, being proactive and getting out there. And I've got to say this, being a person who, was in the world of hate, where you orchestrated certain aspects of hatred. Let's get that straight. All right, you were the online, person who used to engage with that and orchestrate that and whatever. To go from that to a place where 1 minute, I need to find a different way. So I've got to give it to you, mate. To really change that particular manner or way, or to deal with, this sense of a place where you had hate for the other, and today you can have a conversation with that same other, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah, it's nothing special really. It's just getting to know the other person, really. Do you know what I mean? But for me, a lot of the things we've spoke many a times over the years, man, and many of the things I was saying back in the EDL, I still talk about now, as you know. I still talk about the extremist side of Islamism. I still talk about the denial of victimhood that people talk about. I've just found a better way to deal with the issues instead of causing a problem. This way, I'm kind of part of a solution, because my voice is being heard properly now by nearly all the right people. If you know what I mean. I think since I've been on this CVE platform for about the last 3.5 years, I've had some challenges along the way because of some of the stuff I say, but I think I'm finally getting there now where I'm making people listen that we need to understand where it comes from before you can tackle it. Do you know what I mean? There's so many more better ways to tackle things than some of the strategies that are in place at the minute. I do honestly think we've wasted millions of pounds over the last 30 years tackling racism and hate, because if we look at I think next week the figures come out for this year. I'm expecting kind of a big rise because of COVID and lockdown, etc. Where's all that money gone? We should be combating this. We should be at least winning the war, so to speak, on this with all this money we've spent over the years. I just think it's time to really look at strategies, really look at your message, and really understand what you're fighting. Don't just tackle it at the top end, because you're missing so much more.
But Ivan, there has to be some sort of sincerity in that. Do you understand? Like, we talk about, let's throw money at it. That's the solution, right? But
yeah,
Ivan,
yeah,
exactly. But Ivan, you and I both know, sadly, there are particular agendas of certain, powers to be, right? They have a particular, reason why they tend to go for a certain type of person who may be a hate mongerer, who might be a fear mongerer, right? Someone who likes the idea of living in fear. There's one side to this, but the other side is once you fear what is the unknown, and a lot of people don't take that initial step, do they, to go to the other side? It takes a certain type of person, right? A character like you, a person like you, who would do that, to go to the other side. Maybe someone like myself who will say, you know what, I am what I am, but you know what, I need to find out what's the thing on the other side. I need to find out why people feel like this about me, my religion, my faith. Why do they hate me? Why do they hate my people? Do you understand? And I think that is gutsy enough. I know there have been a number of journalists and etc. who are from our black community, who have gone to the KKK side, and they made documentaries and questioned people, right? And what's the name? Was it Dina Khan or Dia Khan?
Yeah, dear Khan. Yeah.
Dia Khan, isn't it? She's doing one of them things as well.
Yeah,
Shit. And I
yeah,
tell you,
he
it's really
did well.
powerful for a person who's the hated, going to the people who hate them and to ask them questions. And then the amazing thing is, weirdly, the people who hate, when they meet the people that they hate, the hate starts to diminish. It's like, hey, 1 minute, you're just like me. You have your pain, you have your concern, you have your dreams, you have your wants, you want to live, you want to do all of that. All right, you want to make something for your kids. You know what? I want the same thing. What the hell is this about? Why am I living in here for?
And that's the thing with Dia Khan. I've met Dia, so I know her. So when she went to meet Jeff Shoup from America, he was in the National Socialist movement for 27 years.
He was.
He entered conversation. He filmed that documentary with her, and not long after that, he moved away from the movement. He now kind of works in the field we do, but in America. I know him pretty well as well, so maybe Jeff could be a potential show guest. Do you know what I mean? Because he could give you his side of meeting Dia, which, as you see in the for everybody watching, the documentary is called White Right, and it's filmed around just after Charlottesville in 2017. So yeah, I could even get Jeff, or maybe we could even get Dia on the show.
That'd be brilliant.
Have the lady herself on it. So yeah, I'll reach out to them both and see what they say.
Let's see what they say.
But
the thing is, you need people who are daring like that. You need people who need to take that step. And I think someone like or even others, do you understand, who felt, okay, 1 minute, you hate me, but why do you hate me? What's the reason?
And I think America's had that answer for years already. Do you know what I mean? Daryl Davis.
Yes.
Look at Daryl Davis for years, the last 30 years, I believe, or something. He's been going meeting Klan members as a black man. He's helped derobe 200 leaders, I think, and about 400 people. That's just one person talking to 400. Imagine if there's 10 Daryl Davises. See, dialogue does work, but some people aren't prepared to listen to the other side still because they can't handle what's going to be said.
There's been a bit of a discussion with some of our, listeners today. I think so. Luke's just put a question for it. He goes, "How come these guys are not answering our questions or something like that?" It's nothing like that, guys, and we are very, very grateful that you participate.
I didn't see him.
You understand? And I think, Ivan, we will come back to you some of the questions that you've raised. I think there's a bit of a debate that's happened online as well. And coincidentally, we are talking about, hate crime awareness week and how to counter hate, whereas there's been a bit of a debate between themselves. I hope it has not become too heated. All right. And hopefully, I know this, you posed a question, I think directly to me, Luke. If you want to put that down, if I can answer it, I'll answer it for you, mate. That's not a problem. I know in dialogue and discussion, sometimes heated discussions take place. I get that. But the world I'm from, and this is something that I always emphasize in the engagement of other people, is the engagement of other people is that you have to have an open way of engagement. You have to let people at least say their bit and be professional about it, right? And be understanding about why are they saying what they're saying. Okay? And even though we have disputes, we have difference of opinions and etc., the world we live in, if you really want to challenge, if you really want to create change, you've got to hear someone out. That's the hard bit. I don't disagree with that, because some of the stuff you have to hear is really difficult, but it has to be done to get to a particular solution. That's my personal opinion. Do you know what I mean? Ivan, you tell me, what are your reflections on that? To really get to the bottom. I know finally.
I was just trying to get the channel up so I could see the questions, but it's taking its time to load.
No, it's okay. We'll discuss them, and we will share our thoughts and reflections about some of the questions that have been raised later on as well. You understand? I know, Ivan, yourself, you will definitely be very proactive online later on as well, and you can also pose these questions later on. I will go back and we'll look at the some of the comments that have been made as well. We are near the end of our discussion conversation. Our hours is going to be open in about 10 minutes time, and I think our intention was to at least start off a discussion, start off a conversation that people can listen. They know hate crime awareness week is coming up between the 10th and the 17th of October. Maybe you can do an activity, guys. You can do something proactive in your own community where you can challenge certain type of behaviors, or you can create a workshop, or you can create an awareness workshop where you can explain to people, okay, 1 minute, the way to tackle this type of hate, there's a particular process and procedure, right? If we are going to just stick in our homes and harbor our hates within our hearts and minds about other human beings, it's going to become very, very difficult. The idea is sometimes to get out of our houses, get out of our places where we feel comfortable, all right, and get to those individuals that genuinely they hate you. This is a hard thing to do. Not everybody has the ghoulies to do it, but it has to be done. It has to be done. And when that's done, what do you get? The man's right in front of you. He's sitting right here. Ivan's sitting right here. It wasn't an easy journey. You understand? It was a drop-by-drop process, but it's happened. Okay? And I know those individuals who are ex-EDL or ex-far right or ex-Islamist or far left or whatever the area of extreme may be. But the only way they got away and moved away from it is through that interaction, engagement with people that they initially had hate in their heart for. This is not always the easy thing to do. Sometime the ones that are on the other side, who are the ones who receive hate, they have to get out of their comfort zone and go to places where others can have a dialogue conversation with, like they are counted, like a number of other people have done, and that created change. It's a very difficult thing to do sometimes, but it's one of the most powerful ways to challenge what people hold in their hearts and their minds. So hopefully our discussion and conversation has been that. I'm going to put on an image up, and I want you to, Ivan, tell me what's happening there. Why are you holding that massive candle? What does all that mean, mate? What's going on?
Oh, that was that was the hate crime candle. It get lit every year. So the day before, it was just a photo shoot to do a few pictures with it. There's me and Manwar, and I think he was the vicar of Ipswich or something big around there. And in the middle is Debbie Charles, the lady who gave me my second chance in life, really.
Oh, wow.
Because it was her who first invited me to do a workshop with autistic people and people learning difficulties about radicalization and the meaning of it, as some of the words in there aren't used by most people's vocabulary. So we just give them a different word to use. And after a little while, they kind of understood what radicalization was properly, because language that we use nowadays to describe things doesn't resonate with everybody. It only resonates with people who know that word. And so sometimes it's better to do things basic and simple so that everybody understands it.
Yes.
But before that event, though, I turned up there about 9:15, and I was met by 3 policemen on the door. They weren't going to let me in because of my past. I've been out of the EDL about six months off from that day, and they still saw me as a threat. So I had to ring Debbie up and say, Deb, the police won't let me in, for her to come down and tell the police to sort of like leave me alone and go away. So because of that is where I am today, because of Debbie.
This is what happened.
No, this is a different event.
Oh, okay. Sorry, mate.
Right.
Why is it that you have an escort of police around you all the time, mate?
Because they saw the EDL as a big threat for some reason.
Yeah.
So this picture here, right, I think, if I remember rightly, this is around 2016, 2017. bearing in mind, I left the English Defence League in 2014. This was a local event run by a couple of Muslim guys. It was an EID event, Eid event. And the 2 years previous, I tried to get in, but the police rejected me every time.
Right.
So the third time, this time, I went to speak to the owner who was doing the event, and I told him my problem. So I said, look, the last 2 years I've been evicted by the police because of my past. So he invited me with a personal invite,
Oh wow.
and I still had babysitters. And I still had babysitters for the night sitting around me because they didn't trust me. I even had an invite from the organisers.
Think about it. You know, I mean, 6 months. You've been 6 months out of, you know, an establishment or an organization, which was, in a way, if you think about it, it was projecting this idea of fear around Muslims. Do you understand? Sense of Islamophobia. That's what it was, wasn't it? And 6 months later, you're turning up onto your Eid program to have some food.
And had some bodyguards for the night. I felt honoured. It kind of made things worse for me having them sat around me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because people looked at me differently. Nobody really engaged with me like I wanted them to because I had my escort. Do you know what I mean? I must admit, the 2 previous years we'd gone there, we did get kicked out to the point where the police escorted us out of the building. But not just that, they followed us in my car to make sure we went home that night.
Right.
It was crazy back then. And I'd left the EDL then, do you know what I mean? This is life after the EDL. I still had challenges from the police, do you know what I mean?
And you would, in fact, like you said, you became the hated a lot of the time because now you started to speak to the so-called enemy, right? Which in itself is guilty enough. But by doing that, you were trying to somehow remove the hate you had in your heart for those same people, if I may put it like that. Would you say?
Yeah, in a way, I think it was to educate myself better, do you know what I mean? Because, like I said, I come from a town where there's not much difference or diversity. So, to me, some things back then maybe was a fear to a point because my town, I didn't want lots of different people coming to my town making, like, when you're in the echo chambers, that's where it all happens, really, because there's people who lived in Birmingham. They obviously had different issues with Muslims than people where I lived. So when they were telling us their stories, we started to believe that that's what's going to happen to our towns. So that's where the fear comes. And that's when, I guess, hatred comes because you're constantly seeing the same sort of stories in groups from all around the country, be it Blackburn, Burnley. There's always another side of the argument that the papers don't print. And in the echo chambers, that's where a lot of the views were back then. A lot of the views now are kind of more out of the echo chambers now. They're starting to creep out of the echo chambers now. Do you know what I mean? But it's just standard dialogue, I think. Every counter narrative, everything we do in life is talking to people. We've just forgotten to have a proper conversation where we actually listen to understand instead of just, great day, sort of just to reply. Is that
one of the most powerful ways of countering hate, you would say, is genuinely having that conversation, having the guts to go over to a place and talk to those people who genuinely hold hate for you, would you say?
Yeah, I think that's one way. It's like, even if you look at the Black Lives Matter when that protest started, I think it was in Manchester, the Black Lives Matter people went up to a couple of people on the other side, started talking. That's where the power is, when people come together because they'll both realise.
That was a very powerful image. That was a very powerful image where,
because
you're right. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because both sides had valid arguments that day. Do you know what I mean? But they were arguing, most of the couple was arguing about who was right and wrong. Nobody sat down and thought, hang on, let's listen to the other person. We might maybe have something on the same concerns, which they did. But nobody was prepared to listen to the other side. It was, right, if you're not a BLM supporter, you're on that side, you're racist, you're fascist. But as I said, you've got to understand where hate comes from. It's the same with what's happening in Dover at the minute with all the people down there. There are genuine concerns down there around immigration, because not every boat that's coming over is getting stopped. You've seen reports and that on thing where people are washed up in the front room and see a group of men run past. There's no police cars there. Then what happens to them people? They disappear. This is where that fear comes from. Thousands of people get in because you don't know the figures. There's no proper figures for nothing. And then the political correctness come in because nobody's allowed to say anything different to that side. We're supposed to allow everybody in. There is that genuine concern around immigration that needs to be spoken about. Because
and it does.
Everybody
I think that's something, on the creating the conversation podcast. I think that's something that we need to talk about that as well. We need to discuss that as well, because that is a genuine concern for a lot of viewers and people that are within this country and even other countries as well. And we need to dispel certain false views and ideas of immigration as well. I think it's important to do that because we are a nation where immigration brought us, because of immigration, because of the Commonwealth, we got strength back in our legs and we stood up and became once again an economical power of the world. We can't forget the historical fact. Guys, it has been, with Ivan, of course, is always an amazing opportunity to have a conversation and discussion around different aspects. Hopefully what we've discussed about today, some aspects of what hate is, what is hate crime, what are the 9 areas of which are protective factors around hate and etc., where the Equalities Act of 2010 emphasizes they need to be protected and cared about. Of course, we touched on certain aspects of Ivan's own experience, his own journey through the processes of hate, and especially hate towards, in his case, was more about Islamophobia or Islam, it's per se, or Muslims, because of the behavior that he felt was wrong and false. But then the journey out of all of that as well. And I think there are many conversations that could take place: how, when, what, why is the reason, why does it take place, and why does this happen? The truth of the matter is, ignorance is usually the foundation of hate itself. And I believe strongly, I know Ivan holds the similar sentiments as myself. Once you know the one you perceive to hate, your hate slowly but surely starts to diminish, which is very powerful. It does take a little bit more guts. It does take, a person has to be a little fearless to take that initial step and engaging with people they may have strong, wrong, false, hateful views about. Now, this is not easy to do for a lot of people, okay, because we have become ghettified. We live in our small communities. We live in areas where predominantly there are people from a similar religion or similar ethnicity or similar skin color or whatever it is, right? And because of that, we don't see the other. And sadly, the way the system works, may that be because of the tool of media, may that be because of politics, it's so easy for the authorities to create an environment, right, of hate and hate mongering and discussion of hate of the other, because we don't know the other. This is why. So I come from an Islamic tradition, and one of the key aspects of our tradition is get to know your neighbor. Get to know your neighbor. Knock on. How you doing? You're all right. Gloria, what's going on with you? How's your life? I haven't seen you for 4 or 5 days. You're all right. What's been happening with you? Now, with COVID, with all this COVID stuff happening and people being behind closed doors, that was one of the key things that was shown again and again, that people were going around putting food at people's houses. They don't even know. They've not probably ever met the good neighbors before, right? And they're in their own homes. They're probably harboring these views and ideas. Oh, look at these. I don't want to use the term, the peas and the whatever they are. All right, what's wrong with them? Why are they coming? Why in this country? And suddenly that same person has come and put a bag of groceries right in front of the house. You're like, hey, what happened here? Why are you looking after me for? Do you know what I'm saying? And these are very simple human actions, but they're very powerful actions. In our tradition, in my tradition, Islamic tradition, we have this thing that when you meet someone, smile. Why? Smiling is a charity. Do you know what I'm saying? When you see someone, anyone, doesn't matter. Says, we say to people, we say this, don't we? We go, Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, you must have heard this a lot. All right, assalamu alaikum. The reason behind that, Ivan, is this: if a person meets me on the street, I don't know that person, and I say assalamu alaikum to them, peace be upon you, they will know straight away that this person is not going to harm me, they're not going to hurt me. That's the foundation of it. That's the reason behind it. But sadly, all right, the world we live in today, because we don't know the other, we don't make the effort to get to know other individuals, right? We don't break them barriers that we have created or have been raised in front of us about other human beings. So in my tradition, and I'm telling you, there's some weird places I get to, being blunt, you know, sometimes I get to places where I'm the only Asian lad in them places. Okay, because of my work, because of the nature of some of the stuff I do now. But in a lot of ways, that has taken away, hopefully, a lot of my prejudices as well. You know, some of the elements of hatred that I might hold because of my ignorance. Do you understand? But I had to take that step. I had to get out of my comfort zone and go and talk to people who probably hate me, who want to kill me, who want to get rid of me, and say, "Yeah, me Pakuyos, get out of this country." So I think that it is hard. I'm not saying, guys, I'm not saying it's not easy. It's easy. It's not. I know initially to take that initial step is difficult, but guess what? Once you've done it, trust me, it's worth it. What are your thoughts on this, mate?
Yeah, that's it really. It's like I said, with COVID, it's become a bit worse because not only are people not having the conversations with each other when they're out because they're wearing a mask or whatever, that smiling to each other, that little gesture that most people do, has taken away from us as well while you're wearing a mask. So there's really no human connection when you're outside your house as such, really. Do you know what I mean? So it's probably fueling a bit more of this division because the most basic human need is to be understood, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And heard. And people aren't getting that at the minute. So and it's just sad when you look back at the start of COVID, that reconnection of common ground with everyone. And now look at us. We still need each other, but we're divided again. It's just sad we couldn't carry that on for longer. And then we're at this point again.
You know what it is? Maybe I'm a bit idealistic or whatever I am. So I believe in the genuine human nature, the nature of humanity, and the goodness in humanity. I believe in that because I have found, you know, goodness in some of the most dark or light in the most darkest places, mate. And I'm going to be blunt, mate. And I tell you, you know, when I find that, see, I'm a man of faith. So when I find that, I glorify my Lord. I say, wow, people that I would have never thought could do good are doing good. Ivan, for me, you're an example. You know what I'm saying? You are that type of person. I believe that. That's my belief. Do you know what I'm saying? I just want to finally share this with our audience and people who will be listening to this later on. We are very lucky to have a very significant individual to join us next week. Of course, it is Hate Crime Awareness Week. We have a gentleman, barrister Jasveer Singh. He is going to come. He's going to talk to us. He's an individual who works. He's an activist in his own right. He's a person who works in a professional setup, and he comes across or has come across many because of his legal profession, as well as his own personal experience as being a Sikh gentleman. All right, and a practicing Sikh gentleman in the sense that he has a particular dress code and etc. and how he holds his beard and whatever it is. All right, that's what he does. In fact, let me just bring this up if I can. Bring him up just for our viewers to see. This gentleman hopefully will be with us next week. It's going to be an awesome conversation with him. Some questions that we're going to raise in front of him as well of his experience being a young Sikh gentleman, Asian gentleman in this country in Britain, and his own experience of being maybe the victim of certain hate crimes as well. So guys, from me and from Ivan, all right, from the Creating the Conversation podcast. Peace out, guys. And look after yourself. Hopefully to see you next week again. All right, and we will give you a shout. God bless. Take care, mate. Ivan, big up.
See you later, mate. Bye.
See ya.